All right. Some noise happening here and there. Starting. Come on. Stream it. Okay, we're good. Just a little bit. It's okay. And turn that down. Wi-Fi on my phone. And now let's start. Thanks for joining. Sorry for a slight delay in how I'm out of it. Okay. I was trying to do too much. So today, let's see, that looks pretty good. Today I was going to do more or less what I posted last night, where I had an image and it sort of degrades or gets more simplified as time goes on. And how I did that was I took an image and I traced it at 1/4 scale as it went along. And last night I was using my computer screen and trace directly from there. But what I'm going to try to do today, so you can see it and see how it looks, is to instead work from a printout, which may or may not have good or bad results. It's a little bit different of a scale. So what I'll do is I will just do a basic tracing of each of these instances. And as it gets smaller, there are more of them. So you have the initial tracing at this scale, this scale, this scale. And I might also try just scanning it and having it come back that way. It will take a minute to scan, so when it actually comes down to it, it's going to be like 5 minutes of me being like, because I will be scanning at 4800 DPI or PPI, which stands for dots per inch or pixels per inch, which is the density of little points that make up a larger image. And I figure I'll probably be using my little microscope, USB microscope, to showcase some of these images, because you won't be able to really discern them once it gets to at this distance, the elements of it. So to start things off, make sure one of these isn't, what does this look like? For the sake of clarity, I'm going to use one of these other pieces of tracing paper that's a little bit more translucent. You can see through it a little bit better. If I was working on a light table or something like that, which I do not have with me at the moment, I'd be more okay with doing this using that other tracing paper. And that's a little bit cheaper, but also a little bit more absorbent, a little bit more of a tooth, which might look interesting at small scale, but I won't be able to see it with the number of lights that I have going around me. And the fact that this is not backlit. So I'm going to tape this down on the back. And let's just pull it towards the center. And I can realign it later. The rectangles that I have around each of these, so I can put it into a 16 by 9 crop when I'm done. And the one that I did last night, I ended up having to mess around with it a little bit and edit out some bits and pieces, and I want to be able to leave the paper texture in there once I actually scan it and I need a little bit more space, where the one that I did last night, the space between each of the images, I just did about around and then 50% height and width and duplicated the reference image as I went from there. But it means that if I want to have paper texture surrounding it entirely for a decent amount of space, then I need to have a little bit more leeway. This is not the exact same photo, but it is quite similar. And I'm going to be using technical pen, which I might have some issue here and there with, but should be working. And I'm going to have some tea to settle for a second. I'm a little bit frazzled because I was trying to do too much this morning. And did a few things not super well, as opposed to one or two things very well. So this will just be pretty basic. This is not a particularly complex or difficult thing to do. The most difficulty comes with scaling it down. I'm trying these things out because I was looking at some work that I did when I was in college and right out of college, and it has a different quality to it, and I've gotten more patient with time with how I trace and interact and animate and just work in general. But I also have a little bit more money to dedicate to projects, and take a little bit more time and patience in the acquiring of those physical materials. And so when I was in college, I had essentially no extra money, or no money that I could dedicate towards stuff, and all of it was personal or for school. And I wasn't like making a lot of money from working at college radio or money I had otherwise, but the money I had was school supplies and printing and such, but I had limited tracing paper. And so what I would do is, nowadays I usually cut it in half just because it fits on standard scanners better and is a little bit more manageable of a size, and it's relatively widescreen if you just put it in half. But then in college I would do quarters into eighths and sometimes sixteenths, so I'd have working space that would be maybe about here, and it had a sketchy quality to it that I've sort of moved away from, but there's still value in that sort of deal, and so I'm trying to revisit that sort of practice, and also working with the technical pen instead of brush and ink. I don't like how the technical pen looks when it's a wider or larger image. I like how it looks when it's small and you start to see the variances of the line that is more or less negligible when you're working at a larger scale, which is sort of the appeal of a technical pen, is how it is pretty consistent. So there you have one image. I'll zoom in a little bit. Zoom in a little bit so you can see a bit more as I'm working on these guys. Okay. So now this is a quarter of the resolution. And I will trace this. So now you start to have elements that might have had a width to them beforehand, like the glasses. These glasses at this scale compared to the width of the pin, you have 2 lines. But once you get down to here, only the thickest part of the glasses do you have 2 lines to represent, or separated lines to represent that image. And then you start to lose detail on the eye as well. I'm going to go ahead and hook up a little microscope thing so you can see some of these details perhaps a bit better. I haven't used this in a minute. Got it? Macro. Where is this? It's on. I might have to just add it again. Video capture device. New one. Device. Yep. Okay. Scale this down a little. And is orientation correct? So you can compare what this looks like at this scale to what the detail that you have on this guy might look like. And so the weight of the line gets much thicker, the amount of detail that you have lessens, and it's sort of a way to explore resolution, but in a physical sense. That little microscope is going to get more interesting as I get smaller. And you start to completely abstract. Hello, Marine. So at this stage, I still have pupils. And some lines that are separated around lips and stuff. Hey, Push. Also this sort of setup where as it gets smaller I have more instances of the drawing. You end up spending more time with less detail, which I like the effect that that has. Because I'll play it back. The ultimate goal is to take this and scan it at a high enough resolution to where I can scale that these small ones are large enough to have at the same scale as all of them at the higher resolution, and you see the amount of information that lies within at the same relation to the original representation, if that makes sense. And so it's an exponential thing where each time the number of images doubles. So you have a glimpse at the highest detailed image, and then you have a little bit longer on this secondary stage, and then a little bit longer on the third stage and longer on the fourth, and so on and so forth until you get. I can't draw smaller than this, and also my scanner can like sort of barely have this scan to be reasonable resolution because eyebrows. 4800 is a pretty high scanning resolution. It's not the highest that you'll get. You'll have higher on stuff that's like scanning negatives, stuff like that. In those you have to like not touch anything around the space or you'll mess up the scan, because if you're scanning something for like print resolution from 35 millimeter image, you got something about yay size and you're trying to scan it at a high enough resolution to print. Thank you, Alex. Might need to readjust this positioning. So now we're going to get to a stage where you have oh yeah, tea, because I'm drinking tea. You'll probably have some difficulty seeing it as I'm tracing the elements, but I'll sort of go through after I get one down and talk about what's been lost or changed using my little microscope. As you decrease in resolution and you're tracing something, you're making more decisions regarding how to best illustrate and represent what you're looking at. So when you get to, come on, turn on. It's on. Okay. Still haven't gotten used to what the orientation of this is. Sorry, let's try to get this brighter. So now, at this resolution, you've lost any sort of lines around the glasses. The eyes are no longer, you can't illustrate a pupil. You can only have sort of the iris and the space around it. The nose has barely a nostril, and you no longer have this extra edge right up here. There it is. Wait, I can do this multiple ways. Okay. It's a little bit awkward to go through. I feel kind of like a doctor doing an ultrasound or something. Okay, so up here you have clear definition between upper eyelid, iris, the pupil. You have multiple nostrils, multiple lines for the lip. You have multiple lines for the outline of the glasses, clear hair. You can even put in a little bit of detail in the edge of the hair there. But down here, you're sort of guessing a bit. Oh, am I struggling a bit? I get us back this way. At this stage, you have just like enough to hint at the eye, an upper lip, but it's fully solid. The glasses are solid as well. And I'll come back and mess with the next stage once I draw some of these out. So that's in decent positioning. Let's do this 3 more times. Still have glasses, can do upper bit of the eyelid. Come back and add the eyebrow. Also, like when it comes to tracing or rotoscoping or whatever, that in the repetition of it, if you're starting anew each time, you have to sort of learn how best to be consistent with things and what features. Over time, you sort of learn what features are more prominent or distinct because you're tracing it a bunch of times over and over again. But I also like seeing each instance where choices are different, because it sort of is like a retroactive bit where I can figure out sort of what it was that I was paying attention to in that moment, what I thought was important there for that period of time. One more at this scale, and then we'll start to get to where it really forces some abstraction, and then even more and even more. So I'll get through these guys and then trace one of the other guys, and from there I will revisit the microscope, and it'll start to be a little bit more practical of a tool, because I think I might be able to show the full face with it flush against the paper. This little microscope doesn't deal as well with being handheld because it's pretty short, pretty narrow focus, depth of field. Okay, let's check this microscope back out. I got a little bit of pullback. But now, come on, focus. Now you've now I have anything pointy I can use. Let's use this brush. So now the eyes have no pupil, no iris. It's just purely a dot. Kind of eyebrow. The hair is a little less definition. The lips are a little less specific, and you start to not have as distinct of a face shape. It's a little bit harder to recognize that it's specifically me. It becomes a little bit more anonymous. So let's go through that a few more times. It also becomes sort of faster as you get smaller and a little less representational. Probably can't see it in the view that you have, but I got the eyes a little bit separated. Drink a tea. I have that guy there. Oh, it's right here. I'm gonna see if I can get this stationed in a way that you might be able to watch this at a closer look without it interrupting my ability to draw. You can at least do it temporarily. I don't know that I'll be able to shift this as I'm working. Still looking okay? Yeah. Working at a smaller scale also forces you to be aware of time and how the tool that you're using is affected by slightly better focus. Like if you leave whatever tool you're working with in a position, even if it's like a good technical pen, it'll still build up a bit more ink, which isn't so much of an issue when you're working at like a regular sort of scale. But at other times, when you're working tiny, you might have issues. So let's get even smaller. Now I'm going to really have to abstract a bit more. I can still have glasses and like kind of a nose. now my face is more or less unrecognizable other than having glasses. Let's get an up-close look at this guy. You can even see that it's wet. Okay. Now you can see that abstraction. You can see the ink slowly drying and getting less shiny. But no lips, barely a pupil. Just a line. Yep. Okay. Let's get back to where it's in moderate focus. There it is. So getting to just sort of make choices a little bit more at this scale, because I can't discern features of just those dots. I have to sort of rely on what I already know and what makes up enough of a face. My face in particular. So at this scale you start to have very small choices affect how it looks overall. I'm gonna go even smaller than this. And I will pretty much learn or lose anything that could be defined as identifiable. There's a lot of stuff in animation. I like seeing how more of an ink flow now. I like seeing how things are affected by change over a period of time that might seem negligible in real time or in whatever stage that you have to experience something in. Like, you never feel like you're getting taller, really, or gaining weight or something until it's taken a few stages. It's not an immediate thing. You don't feel your hair grow. You feel that your hair has grown. You can notice changes in comparison to previous experiences, but a lot of things you don't experience in the moment. You have a period of time during which there are subtle changes that add up over time. And so the differences at each of these stages in this animation I'm working on are discernible but aren't terribly varied. So like the differences between the faces I've traced that are at this scale, these little guys, not terribly. So these guys aren't terribly different from these guys, aren't terribly different from these guys, aren't terribly different from these guys and these guys. But this guy is much different than any of these guys. But it's these stages along the way that you don't notice the huge jump if I went from here to here. These guys, these tiny guys, and this big guy, that difference isn't so pronounced, but, or that difference is pronounced, but you would notice it immediately. But if you transition from here to here, there's not too much, and it's just working in stages. So now let's see if I can angle this in such a way. Focus. We'll see how this goes. So now I've got more or less no information. There's sort of like eye position, hair. I can think of a nose and mouth, but that face does not look like the face above it. You can also see the printing being, there it is, that's a little better. How the print is based on dots. There's only one color of ink, or toner, on this print that I have. See the So the amount of information that is used in displaying just this eye at this scale, or even just the iris and pupil here, is more information than what's provided for the smallest entire face. Zoom this guy out so you can see a little bit more of what's actually happening. hear my computer fan running. So I guess that's more or less it. Too much pressure on these guys. Let me look at it without the. Here you can look at that. Without the printout behind it. There's a chance some of the toner transferred as well. Does look like some toner transferred, or while I was moving I scraped stuff a little bit. There is my face. And there's my face a little bit larger. And there, again, a bit larger, a little bit more detailed. And then, yet again, even larger, more detailed. And again. And I don't know if this will focus. That scale. I like these tiny guys. Barely have a discernible face to them. So next is scanning for a bit of time. Because this has to scan at a very high resolution in order to be visible. Down, put my computer on top of it for a little bit of added weight. Plug in my scanner. Open up image capture. But it will be like 5 minutes of scanning. So if you have questions, thoughts, concerns, etc., you can ask them. I'll move this little mount out the way. this area, 4800, change the location. Desktop, live designs, October 4th, 10-04-2020, underscore high-res scan. There's scan. Okay. And now we will start. Hello, Howard. Howard Way. We are scanning. You heard that little that's it moving to a position, and now it's going to scan for a while. Also, if I actually do import this and animate it while on live and broadcasting, there's a decent chance that you're going to get some dropped frames in the playback. Just because I'll be working with an image that's like 27,000 pixels in either direction. I was cleaning my room earlier. Hello, Ellie, and I'm guessing your name's Laura. We are waiting for something to scan. Do I have I do have the one from yesterday. I gotta be careful not to mess with the scanner as it's working. This is not the same photo, but it is quite similar because I take similar selfies. Here you can see a little bit more of the this is sort of like an exponential function or a half-life sort of deal where each one's decaying 50%. So you'll never actually get when I was organizing this printout, in my mind I'm like, oh, it'll be the same width here for all of the separate elements of it as it is here, but it's not, because you have 50% and then 50% of that, 50% of that, and it's just always getting 50% of that distance, and it eventually becomes negligible, the difference for like a half-life for most instances, but it never completely reaches that edge, and if you scale it up then you have this same sort of distance happening. Any questions? We're scanning slow. And I don't really have a means of showcasing the scale difference better than what I already did with this microscope. I can show this guy at least. So let's set that guy out. And let's see what sort of it's not connected. Cancel. Maybe it's not connected. Oh, yeah, I've disconnected it to scan. I am scanning more or less this sort of treatment on Illustrator, or a tracing I did of these guys. I can zoom back in on this. This is looking a bit compressed. So if I zoom in, you can get a better visual. I'm scanning at 4800 DPI, which is for general like photo quality prints, you'd have it at like 300 DPI. So it is 16 times the resolution. Actually, it's more than that. And that's me, Pablo. I see. Let's see. Scanning. Hello. How's it going? I think your shirt got printed already. It's much faster for the European fulfillment service than it is in the United States. At least so it seems thus far in my experience. Waiting on the scan. Scan is going slowly, slowly. And when I turned on my little microscopes camera, I forgot that I had disconnected it from my computer. I don't know what all you can see in the background, but my bed is a bit chaotic currently because I was cleaning. I had to sweep the floor. That's why I had a little bit of a late start to doing the live stream. I can hear my computer making noise as it's scanning and such. Okay. Well, let's see back in a minute. The live setup that I have, I actually can connect as many cameras as it can manage. I'm using OBS to get the broadcast stream going, and then that's being streamed through using Yellow Duck. So Yellow Duck is it just makes it so you can stream using something like OBS or other more customizable. I was trying to look for the word customizable streaming things. You can push it to Instagram Live, and the actual physical setup I have, I guess I can take this guy off and show you. It's harder to showcase with the other camera, so let me see what I'm looking at. Okay, so I have 2 desktop LED lights, tripod, which you actually gave me, Pablo. Then this, it's the best like general mic that I have. It's just a blue snowball guy. That's what's picking up the audio, so he probably heard me shifting on it. Then I'm watching the live stream on my phone over here. Hello, thanks for watching in Malaysia. Over here I have my phone streaming from a separate account to watch the stream. Then I have general artboard down here. If you look up, then I have a higher resolution webcam that is on sort of a document mount sort of deal, so I can have it looking directly down. And then I have this ring light over to the side that helps to fill out things, because this camera doesn't deal as well with low light, and the fact that my room has a window behind me, I need to sort of get as much light in the close proximity of things to make it so I'm not completely blown out as it's trying to get the right exposure. It finished scanning. So now let's see whether or not my computer freaks out as I try to open up this larger file. So let me close out of any extra stuff I have going. I do not need Audition running. Let's just quit Audition. Delete it. Damn it, now it's trying to actually open. Force quit that guy. Anything else running that I don't need running right now? Don't need QuickTime. Don't send that. And I'll probably free up a little RAM by closing Spotify. Okay, so let me see. It's 128 megabyte. And then also, forgot to mention, I've got this guy for doing up close macro sort of things. And using OBS, you can also do additional inputs. You can do device capture. So if you're working on your computer, you can do that, but take into account the fact that most things are going to be working on your computer or landscape, and if you're going out to Instagram, it's going to be portrait, so cropping and stuff like that. So I've opened this guy. Yep. And I'm going to, do I have display capture? Yeah, I do. Okay. So let's see how that looks. Let's get to just 100%. These are a little bit distorted, and I think that's because they're a little bit blurry. Just the distance, scanners have a very shallow depth of field, and if you're scanning at this high resolution, you end up with some things that are not perfect if the paper isn't completely flush with the scanner bed. So I think it's slightly out of focus. There's also a little bit of weird stuff happening in some spots, which I don't know what exactly happened there, but maybe the computer just was dealing with too much broadcasting and such. Move this guy up a little bit. You can see video feedback when I'm doing that. So image rotation, it will go slowly because this image is giant. And I think what I might actually do is save these into different files, because any work that I'm doing on this. So let's get this to be decently wide, and that is 17,000 pixels tall. There you have it at 100%. Sorry, I'm seeing how it looks cropped on my phone here and there. Showing off my guns. So what I'm going to do is create a 1920 by 1080 image and scale this up a little bit. It's not super detailed, so I can get away with some of that. It's a little bit bad. I might actually rescan this section, but without as much on the since I have it larger, I can make this smaller and maybe put a little bit more weight down as I'm scanning it, and I don't have to dedicate quite as much time since I'll only be scanning a portion of it. Come on. Whatever, probably making it worse because now it's not as flat. Okay. I'm going to try scanning this section again with a bit more weight placed on it to try and flatten it out. What else do I have that has some weight to it? You can scan on regular paper, it's fine. I just like tracing paper, and tracing paper is a little bit thinner, so this paper doesn't react as much because it's a little bit heftier and a little bit smoother, but tracing paper, it's thinner than regular paper, and so when you put ink or other things on it, it distorts the paper a bit. If you put any sort of moisture on it, that section of the paper expands a little bit larger, and so it makes the paper around it that hasn't expanded, doesn't have that additional material happening. It has to compensate, and so it wrinkles around the edge, and I like that element of things, but it's not necessary for drawing or scanning, especially if you're ultimately making something that is going to be purely black and white. If you want paper texture, I like having a little bit more on tracing paper. I just also like tracing paper in general. I like the separation, the slight variation that you have to compensate with elements of it. I'm just trying to save time on this guy, so let's get that. Do I have anything else in close proximity that is a dense, hefty thing? Do how dense is this rock? That's decent. Okay. This rock will go on top of it. Trying to get this to be as flat as possible, because these are a little bit blurred. So now let's overview. You'll get different effects or different outcomes with different paper. If you're scanning with the intent of having texture with it. So I don't need that much. And now we're scanning again. Different paper will have different textures depending on the tooth, what you're using to mark it, etc., etc. So now we're waiting on this to scan slowly. This won't take as long because I'm only scanning this section as opposed to something about EA size. Is my cursor on that screen? I don't know if it records the cursor. Yep, it does. This is not the full time required for the scan. I don't know why this loading bar is as inaccurate as it is. Who inspires me? I just like seeing work and stuff. As far as animators, it's easier for me to name off. Most people I like recognize their handles on stuff, but I actually don't remember their names or their handles. I recognize the like offhand association I have between the icon and the name, so I can recognize it, but I don't remember names a lot. But for older animators, there's Norman McLaren is a big one for me. Let's see how this did. That's a bit better. Still not perfect, but let's see. How's it? It's a bit better, I think. Maybe I'm wrong on that. image rotation 9 degrees clockwise. I think I'm just trying to get it a little too small, maybe. A little bit tighter. That's a bit better. Still not perfect, but these are pretty abstracted. So it's like that. This guy is a little bit angled. And now let's scale this up to where one of these takes up a good chunk. And I'm just going to do like a comparison of maybe 4 of these sections. So let's also grab these guys. Scale this down a bit. Rest maybe about here. So now you can zoom in on this a bit. So you can see that a little better. So you can see the difference in stuff more quickly. Now let's grab the next section. I need to save that guy. It's these guys. Copy these guys over. Oop, wrong bit. Close that guy, don't save it. Down to about 50%. Transparency. Grab the next section. These are much larger. Now let's do a basic playback once I get these all organized. Next section. Now it's the time that you might be getting some dropped frames because I'm dealing with the largest sections of information. Add a little bit more to see if I can't. I'm gonna have to maybe leave bits of things. And then the largest guy, which will need to scale down a bunch. Let's do that amount. Transform slowly. Okay. A little bit tighter. So let's just get this playback decent. You save this. $1080. Okay, it's too big. Anyway, frame animation. Make frames from layers. Get rid of this guy. And we'll just have this looping back and forth. And have it at 0.1 seconds. Let me add a little bit of darkness on there to accentuate the lines and the changes. For ease of viewing, I'm going to save these out as like thank you. That's fine. I'm going to save these out as image sequence. 1081 loop or 5 images. 10-04-2020 underscore 5 10 frames per second. 1920 1080. Yeah, let's just make it JPEG. I'll probably play back easier. Okay. Render these out. And now let's, I know that it's too big. Turn off the display in that, and we will load in an image slideshow. And it will be cut. Each one will be for 100 milliseconds. 0, and it will loop. So let's add files, live designs, 5 images. It's actually more images. And there you have it. Take these rocks and other elements off. So let's make this guy a little and up next to me. Put it back here. So I can also take the scanner out and sort of review what was happening with my microscope guy. Now he's connected, and I think it's still yeah, okay. So you have this at sort of full resolution. Let's get this to be a white piece of paper so it's better backing. This is sort of full resolution, and then we've got these little guys at lower resolution. But they're all at the end scaled up to be the same size. And you get a degradation of the my ability to accurately depict elements of it by having it at this much smaller scale as it goes along. And then you also start to see more of the texture of the lines themselves and the paper. And so you sort of have degradation of things. Thank you, Charles. Charlie or Chuck. Or maybe you go by Warren or CWL. I gotta get stuff set up. I gotta be out of here by 5. Just different scaling and resolution and such. I don't really have much more to talk about at the moment. I'll try to make some sort of shirt, put it up so you can buy maybe something where my face is looking kind of like this. I need to mess with what the resolution is because it's barely enough to be 1080 for the smallest little guys over here, and there's no way for me to scan these at a higher resolution than what I'm already scanning unless I were to buy a new scanner, or maybe if I had a macro lens going, but the closest thing I have is this guy, and its output is not a higher resolution than what the image is that I'm playing back over there. But yeah, I need to head out in a sec. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, etc., let me know in the next minute or so and I'll try to respond. Otherwise, I'll be back again tomorrow doing something else that I'm not 100% sure. This one took a little bit more prep work, which is another reason I was like 5 minutes late to getting started because I had to print these guys out. Let me date these. I'm using a Macintosh just because that's what I'm used to, and it connects with other devices more easily, like my phone and such. And then camera-wise, these are both Logitech cameras. And then this is like a non-branded. I don't know that maybe the box had a brand, but I think this is just like a cheaper Chinese version of some various things. And then the scanner I'm using is a Canon Cano Slide something, I forget, and I've got too much stuff resting on things right now for me to go in and adjust. Any other questions? I have a MacBook Pro that it's my third one over the past 11 years. And I had a larger project earlier this year and I used part of the income from that to purchase a MacBook Pro that was a little bit more robust than previous purchases that I've made of laptops. I got more tea. I will use Windows sometimes. It's just I have a lot more comfort with MacBook Pro because it's what I've used over time, and I use it a lot with texting people, iMessaging folks. That's easier to do when it's connected that way. Other questions, concerns, comments? Give you guys about a minute or two. It looks like people are sort of dropping off. I'm gonna move this guy to the middle. It looks nice. You can get a similar sort of effect if you don't have to scale it and get it quite as tiny if you're a little bit looser with things, or something I've done in the past and I might mess with. Maybe that's what I do tomorrow. Yeah. So I started larger and then went smaller. Something I've done in the past is trace a single image and then trace that tracing kind of loosely and then trace that tracing of the tracing, and it degradates that way and you start to follow elements and it sort of looks like it's crumpling or doing something else, but it's a different sort of aesthetic outcome deal. But if there's no other questions, concerns, comments, etc., then I will head out and have some form of something up in my web store based on this thing for a shirt or otherwise. If you live internationally and are curious about purchasing something, I can work with you. It'll be a little bit more expensive than what it is in my web store for shipping domestically. And yeah, otherwise gonna head out and post some stuff, get things ready, but that might have to wait until a little bit later because I have something at 5 p.m. local time, which is in about 30 minutes. Thank you, Elizabeth. Otherwise, I will head out. So I'm gonna, unless there's a last minute question that comes through before stuff closes out. Anything else? Okay, I'm gonna disconnect. It'll take a second. There's always a minute that it takes to disconnect. Okay.